evening and welcome to ILTV Weekly. I'm Steve Leibowitz, and joining me in this studio is former Deputy Foreign Minister and Knesset member Danny Ayalon, a regular on our broadcast, and political science professor Dr. Moshe Amirav. As a first-time guest, I would add that Professor Amirav was a paratrooper wounded in the battle for Jerusalem in 1967, served as an advisor to then Prime Minister Ehud Barak during the 2001 Camp David negotiations, and in 1987 initiated talks with the PLO that predated the Oslo process. In today's broadcast, a new peace initiative between Israel and the Palestinians that takes us through Cairo and Moscow, the harshest Israeli response to Gaza rocket fire since 2014, and a warming of relations between Israel and Turkey. Or is it? We open with the security situation. Israel responded to 2 rockets fired by Gaza terrorists into Sderot on Sunday night by targeting 50 terrorist targets, as the IDF conducted its largest bombardment of the enclave since 2014. First, let's hear from a Sderot resident.
נשמע זעקת צבע אדום, מבחינתנו זה היה בהפתעה, כי מזמן לא שמענו צבע אדום, אז הפתיע אותנו מאוד ונכנסנו לממ"ד. אחרי כמה שניות נשמע איזה בום עמום כזה, שחשבנו שאולי הבנו שזה נפילה, אבל חשבנו שזה רחוק מאיתנו. יצאנו החוצה, אנחנו רואים בבית של השכנים, עשן מתאמר לו. אז הבנו שזה ממש קרוב.
For years, we responded to rocket fire from Gaza with a kind of a tit-for-tat response. Professor Amirav, is this the Defense Minister Lieberman's way of saying that there's a new sheriff in town?
No, I don't think it has to do with personalities. It has to do with the situation. And new Defense Minister, first of all, he is new. And second, I'm sure he is listening not only to what the Prime Minister and the government is saying, but also what the army is saying. And the army has a lot what to say. And usually the army is much more restrained than some of the politicians. But this balance of that we see now and we will see in the future will go on like that, and it can go on for many years if we don't have a solution. And the solution is an agreement. So to speak today about agreement looks like a dream, or it's too far. But I still believe that we can get to a solution, even with Hamas, a kind of solution that will lead to ceasefire and maybe even peace.
Danny, is a solution conceivable with Hamas, or are we just kind of in a break in between rounds of war with rocket fire in between and Israeli response?
Yeah, well, Steve, as to any kind of arrangement, political arrangement with Hamas, I'm afraid it's either too naive or far-fetched. Hamas is sworn on the destruction of Israel. They are part of the international movement of the Muslim Brotherhood. They are in the pockets of Iran. So I don't think that, certainly not in the foreseeable future, unless, of course, they change. PLO also changed, renouncing terrorism, recognizing Israel. But since then, they reneged. So there is a lot of sobering effect since the Oslo process. About Gaza, I think there was this IDF response this time was a convergence of the military operational objectives, their assessment of the situation, and the political needs of the government, specifically the new Minister of Defense. But we have to remember, Minister of Defense, he has the Prime Minister above him, and he has the IDF Chief of Staff, Eisenkot, underneath him. And the IDF has been targeting or locating these targets that they wanted to take out long ago. After the operation almost 2 years ago, Hamas has rebuilt a lot of infrastructure and capabilities that there was an opportunity right now to take them out. You notice that there were no casualties over Hamas, only infrastructures and real estate. So the assessment was that within this kind of response, we can contain the situation and Hamas will not escalate. Hamas doesn't have the interest now to escalate because of the isolation that Hamas has vis-a-vis Egypt. And of course, the situation in Syria and Iran being bogged down over there. So, and we know it's not Hamas that actually initiated.
We'll get into those areas, but isn't there a danger here that they initiated the attack. They struck Sderot. There's no argument about that.
But it wasn't Hamas. It was part of Islamic Jihad, which is also part of the Daesh, the ISIS. It's not Hamas.
What I mean is, we did not decide to attack these targets that we knew that were there. We waited until there was rocket fire from Gaza, and then we responded. Isn't there a danger, though, that this can spiral into a conflict that not Hamas and not Israel want at this time?
It's definitely possible. When you start fire, you don't know when it ends, and you don't know what can be the day after. But generally speaking, I agree with him that we are in a situation in which the Hamas doesn't want to get into this escalation. The Hamas is trying even to hold them, but the Hamas doesn't have the power to deal with all the other groups that are there.
And we can't really target those other groups as easily as we can target military sites of Hamas, correct?
Definitely,
yes,
definitely.
It's a long-standing policy of Israel. We see the sovereign as responsible, whether it was the government of Lebanon, vis-a-vis Hezbollah, whether it is still the government of Syria when it comes to any kind of fraction organizations that firing. Also, incidentally, we had some kind of a fire on the Golan Heights yesterday, and of course, Israel responded. In the case of the Gaza Strip, the responsibility lies within Hamas, and it is their interest, it is also within their power to stop any kind of these renegade organizations from firing on Israel.
Moshe, you mentioned just minutes ago about the possibility of actually reaching some kind of an agreement, some kind of a negotiated settlement with Hamas. You mean direct negotiations with Hamas or through intermediaries?
No, I always say that we need an intermediator to this conflict. I think that the Americans, who were for many years doing it, and they are not capable to do it anymore, definitely in the situation right now.
Turkey has some influence there.
Turkey has some influence, and more than that, I think that the Arab League and many Muslim countries are interested today in getting to be involved in the conflict in terms of trying to help both Israel and the PLO and the Hamas to get out of the situation they are in. And we have on the table, just to remind you and the listeners, that we have an agreement, actually, a resolution of the Arab League that we can adopt it tomorrow morning. And this is a very good kind of, I would say, solution to the conflict. It's
we'll be getting into some of the negotiations that are going on now, or attempts to get the negotiations started again. But Danny, is there really an opportunity, even if we reach an agreement with Hamas, as Moshe says, which is kind of unlikely right now, but let's say we even reached an agreement with Hamas, that wouldn't stop the rocket fire either?
Probably not. Probably not. Although Hamas, and we mentioned here, Hamas' interest now is to calm the situation down. They still are licking the wounds from the war of two years ago. They still have to establish, let's say, their authority vis-a-vis the population of Gaza, which saw them responsible for all the plights that they have. But in the case of Hamas, I don't think it's their interest to have any kind of formal or informal negotiations with Israel, because it defeats their own purpose. They do not recognize us. So the only way I see heading forward is a truce or some kind of arrangements which are de facto arrangements of deterrence. Without Israel's deterrence, I'm sure that the life of our population near Gaza would have been hell.
So we strike Hamas, and they're actually trying to stop the rocket fire, so it's kind of puts Hamas in a difficult position. Not that we don't want to have them in a difficult position, but
it gives them
it doesn't find a
incentive.
Solution for us, necessarily.
Right, but I do believe that Hamas, whether not 100%, but they do have the capability and the capacity to limit to the minimum of all this renegade action.
All right, let's turn our attention now to Turkey. Once we had a love affair with what's left of the Ottoman Empire. We loved its vacation retreats, its rugs, its massages, and its strategic support. In recent years, even before the Mavi Marmara debacle, there has been nothing but hate coming out of Ankara for the Jewish state and its president, Tayyip Erdogan. But now a détente has been reached, a new era of normalcy. Let's have a listen.
Tabii yani uygulamada sorun çıkar mı? Ben zannetmiyorum çıksın. Bir defa İsrail Türkiye'nin güvenine muhtaç. Onu söyleyeyim. Yani bölgede kolay değil tabii. Bu kadar Arap dünyası, bu kadar İslam dünyası içerisinde sıkışmış oradaki bir İsrail bir de Türkiye karşısına alacak. Bu zor bir şey. İkincisi Akdeniz'de ciddi malum onun da araştırdığı, bizim de içinde olmaya çalıştığımız doğal gaz yatakları var ciddi anlamda. Bunların Avrupa'ya naklinin en kestirme yolu ve en emin yolu Türkiye gözüküyor.
Israel welcomes the decision taken by the Turkish parliament to approve the agreement between our two countries. We believe that this is only a first stage, and we hope that very soon we will be able to have also ambassadors appointed to Ankara and to Jerusalem, and this will enable us to continue to deepen our relations.
Well, just shortly after those comments were made came the Gaza strikes, and Ankara strongly condemned the Israeli response. And let's be honest with ourselves. President Erdogan is a megalomaniac and a vicious hater of our country who's capable of turning on Israel in a second. Isn't that the case, Danny?
The short answer is yes. I would also add that he is an extreme radical Islamist, and actually the southward turn of the relationship started with him taking taking power in Ankara in 2001, 2002. If you recall, and I think that was a mistake of former Prime Minister Olmert, that he brought in the Turks and Erdogan to negotiate between Israel and Syria, supposedly for peace. And of course, no peace, and Turkey accused us, and this was the beginning of the souring of the relationship. Caste-led operation in 2007 or 8. 4 days before, Olmert was in Ankara sitting with Erdogan. And Erdogan then, after we had to respond of self-defense, Erdogan accused Olmert for cheating him, for not telling him the truth 4 days before. He thought it was all kind of a collusion to embarrass Erdogan. This is what started actually the slippery slide in the relationship. But basically, it's because Erdogan sees himself as or wanted to be hegemon of the Sunni world on the expense of Israel. Nothing has changed except now the interests. There is no love lost between Jerusalem and Ankara today, unfortunately. It's only the interest, and without the isolation of Turkey and its deteriorating geopolitical situation, they wouldn't have come to an agreement with Israel.
Turkey is also facing severe problem of security. They have just experienced a horrific terror attack in which 50 people were killed, half of them children, by a suicide bombing by Islamic State types. Does that fact help the Turkish public to understand Israel a little bit better and what we've been doing to fight against terrorism? Moshe?
I think that when we speak about politics, we in political science, in my subject, we don't look at it from the point of view of the people or the mood or the anger or the pride of Mr. Erdogan or any other. We're looking into interests. And Ankara, Turkey, definitely, they have an interest in being in good relations with us. That's a basic interest for years. It doesn't matter who is the prime minister there, who is the president. So I believe that in the end of the day, if we will be doing things in a different way, we did. I'm not going to criticize now the Israeli government and what happened with the Marmara, but built in what I'm trying to say is the assumption that we can be friends with Ankara, with Turkey. More than that, we have interests that are common. And this is a world of interest, not of feelings. So basically, I'm optimistic about the relationship, the future relationship with Ankara, with even this Erdogan, who everybody loves to hate. I think he is pragmatic, and in the end of the day, he will do what is good for Ankara and for Turkey, and not for his, I would say, Islamic radical or whatever we look at him as. But before everything, the interest of Turkey is before his eyes, and the interest of Turkey today is to be in good relationship with Israel.
Well, we just saw that there's a lot of opposition to Erdogan in his own country, even in his own army. There was a so-called coup or a failed coup attempt. He didn't even blame that on the Zionists. At least I didn't hear about him blaming it on the Zionists. But how secure, would you say, is the position of Erdogan today? And is it becoming stronger because of this failed coup and the things he's able to do as a result?
Well, you know that conspiracy theories are rampant in our part of the world. So there are many in Turkey, but not only in Turkey, who believe that, you know, I would say, the way this attempt coup, the failed coup, was taking place was in such a way that it had no chance to succeed. So some believe it was Erdogan's ploy to actually get rid of all his detractors, all his opposition in Turkey itself, and of course Gulen, which is his arch rival. Now they are in Pennsylvania, United States, and now Turkey is asking for its extradition to back to Turkey. But he is much stronger now, with almost 8,000, the elite of the military, judicial system,
Still in prison.
business, and of course media in prison. Certainly he is now ruling with an iron fist, a real dictator. And this is why I believe there is a lot of criticism, not only in the United States, but also in Europe. So any chances for Turkey now to go into the European Union are non-existent. Yeah.
During the negotiations with Turkey, in the aftermath of the Mavi Marmara, the Turks raised the issue of lifting the blockade on Hamas. They failed in that effort. Ultimately, Israel refused, of course, and all of the aid passes through Ashdod port on its way to Gaza. Does Turkey have, does it still have, the kind of influence that is necessary to keep Hamas in line, in effect, and ultimately to bring them to some kind of an agreement with Israel?
Definitely, I think Turkey is one of the last friends they have, the Hamas in Gaza. They don't have many friends, and Turkey is definitely one of them.
Egypt hates them.
Yeah, everybody around hates them. So in a way, we can use Turkey as a mediator. We can have Turkey as even involved.
But they've actually been disappointed with the response. They thought it wasn't strong enough, the Turkish response after the bombing. And
okay, but still I'm speaking about basic interests for years, not this or that event. Turkey basically is an ally to Israel. And we can use Turkey as a mediator, not only between us and the Hamas, also in the Arab world and with the PLO, with Abu Mazen. So Turkey is a very important country in this area. And as I said before, I much more believe in peace or arrangements that will be with the Arab world, the Arab League, and Turkey than with the United States or, for that matter, the EU, Europe.
all right, well, turning to the non-existent but much talked about peace process. An Israeli delegation traveled to Cairo this week, and after they returned, we heard from Egyptian President al-Sisi that Vladimir Putin is ready to host a peace summit in Moscow between Prime Minister Netanyahu and Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. I'm not sure why Israeli officials had to go to Egypt to get that invitation, since Netanyahu seems to visit Moscow more often than he does Washington. What's behind this latest effort? Danny.
Well, I believe that two things. First of all, from the interest of the Israeli government, certainly as the Obama administration is coming to its end, and there are some initiatives, French initiatives and other initiatives to isolate Israel and in the Security Council. So certainly we have the interest of showing some kind of a political hope political horizon and some kinds of negotiations with the Palestinians. And then, of course, the Palestinians, they also would need, Abbas, which is not very popular among his people, also needs to show some results, some achievements. And of course, he would like, as an entry to the negotiations, to stop settlement activities, other things that I don't think Israel will agree to. And then you have Egypt and Russia, which are filling the void of the United States, which is absent now from the Middle East. It's absent as a leader on the international arena. And hence, we have all these activities. Whether it will bring to any kind of results, I'm very doubtful.
Professor Amirav, you've had quite a bit of personal experience with failed efforts to reach peace agreements with the Palestinians. Does this initiative that comes out of Cairo, bypassing the French initiative, does it have a chance to take off?
You see, I'm optimistic. Some say I'm too much optimistic. I'm optimistic for the last 40 years on the Israeli-Arab conflict. But still, when I look at it as a professor, not as an Israeli, as somebody who has to analyze the political situation and interests, I see an interest for the Arab League to be involved. And I think that they can be a much better mediator. And there is on the table, there is a proposition on the table, 10 years of the Arab League. Now, I want to remind you that the first thing that happened after they decided about this initiative was that Abu Mazen went to Cairo and to Beirut and was against the initiative. So if he was against the initiative, maybe there is something in it that he doesn't like. And if he doesn't like it, we should look into what is it that he doesn't like. So just to give you one example, the Haq al-Awda in Arabic, which is the right of return, it's not mentioned the way it used to be in this new initiative. They speak about negotiation and the agreement of the two sides on the formula of this very, very touchy issue, which means that it is a kind of objective offer right now on the table of Mr. Netanyahu, the Prime Minister. And I think that if Israel says yes, it will be difficult, of course, for the Palestinians to say no.
Since it's coming from the Arab world.
It's coming from the Arab world. I think Sisi is one of the leaders of this new initiative now. He's going into it. And I think this is a new opening, and it's a promise, I think, for us in the near future.
Well, Danny, we heard just yesterday the foreign minister of Egypt talking in a way that denied, or he rejected, in the question that came to him about Israel being terrorists. He said, no, Israel are not terrorists. They know how to defend, they have to defend their interests. We've had a delegation from Saudi Arabia come visiting us. We've had positive things, positive comments from Prime Minister Netanyahu about this Arab initiative and about Saudi Arabia. Are we really in a new era?
Well, all this really is a reflection of the new landscape, of the new realities in the Middle East. And certainly today, there are many converging interests of Israel and the relatively moderate Sunni countries, whether it's Saudi Arabia, the Gulf countries, Egypt, and Jordan, vis-a-vis the radicalism of Iran, Hezbollah, Assad, ISIS, and others. And today, Israel is a main support, whether it's from a military point of view and even beyond, to all these regimes. Again, we are filling the void here of the United States, which is no longer here.
So why doesn't Mahmoud Abbas get it? Why doesn't he jump on this bandwagon, give at least some kind of a feeling to the Israeli leadership and to the Israeli public that he is indeed a man of peace, he's not going to be inciting anymore? Take some even baby steps towards encouraging Israel to put up or shut up and actually come to the table. Because, I mean, we all are a bit skeptical when we heard Netanyahu's speech at Bar Ilan some years ago about his commitment to the two-state solution. He continues until this day to say he's in favor of the two-state solution. If Mahmoud Abbas would take a few of those steps, it would put Netanyahu in a situation where we would have to come and say yes or no.
Yeah, but we are speaking now from the Israeli point of view. And if you look at it from the Arab point of view, what they see is two stubborn people, two stubborn leaders, actually, who cannot sit together to the table. What's the big deal? Let's put them to the table. So you can't say that it's the blame, or all the blame is on the Palestinians. If you ask me, it's 50-50%. And
50-50 from your point of view as well?
No, I would say 90-10.
90-10 to which side?
I mean, 90 the Palestinians.
It's on their fault.
okay,
Absolutely.
we don't have to agree on it, but that's my
And
assessment.
how soon do you guys anticipate something actually moving forward, let's say with a concrete invitation to come to Moscow or wherever it is, for the two leaders to have to make a decision, we're showing up and we're going to negotiate in good faith?
Well, I'm not sure it's feasible or realistic. Abu Mazen is on his last leg because of his age, because of his, I would say, fatigue maybe of running the show among the Palestinians. He has not had elections there for more than 10 years. And I do think, like Professor Amirav talked about, the realism of interest between countries, but personalities and leaders do matter. And just as Arafat did matter, just as Erdogan does matter, we can go all the way back to history. Just as Hitler did matter, personalities do matter. And so long as the Palestinians have this leadership that fails them time and again from the last 100 years, there will not be any movement. And the Palestinians, what they need to do is not just ask from Israel's compromises and concessions. They have to come to the table with their own concessions regarding demilitarization, regarding incitement, regarding this so-called right of return. And until and unless they would be willing to meet us halfway and not 100% their way, I don't see any progress coming.
Okay, we're just about out of time. A final word from you, Moshe?
I don't agree with my friend. I think it's the opposite. We are now in a situation in which, in the two sides actually, Israelis and Palestinians, they are watching what's happening and they are not jumping into the water. And without jumping into the water, we will never, never be able to swim.
And you won't even get wet.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're out of time for today, but don't despair. It's only 6 days and 23 and a half hours until the next edition of ILTV Weekly. Until then, you can watch all of the news and features about Israel on iltv.tv. I want to thank our guests, Dani Ayalon and Dr. Moshe Amirav, for being with us. And thank you, our viewers. Until next time, I'm Steve Leibowitz, and this was Israel Weekly.